He played louder than thunder, but God still heard him fall. Allen Collins. Some souls don't die in flames, they burn slow, note by note. The plane crashed once. The music crashed for 13 years. The footage flickers. Allen on stage, 1977, Les Paul slung low. Fingers flying across the fretboard like they're trying to escape gravity itself. Face twisted in something that looks like pain and transcendence making love. This is the story of a man who was told to play louder than thunder and spent the rest of his life learning that silence has the last solo. A man who created the most famous guitar scream in Southern rock history, and then discovered that freedom was his anthem but gravity was his curse. The screen shows wreckage. October 20th, 1977. A plane scattered across a Mississippi swamp. Bodies. Twisted metal. Somewhere in that silence, Allen Collins opens his eyes and realizes he's still breathing. His best friend is dead. His brothers are dead. And Allen gets to live with that for 13 years. He once said, "Surviving ain't always living." Every day after the crash, he proved it. The question hangs in the air like the last note of a solo that won't resolve. What do you do when the music stops but your heart keeps beating? July 19th, 1952, Jacksonville, Florida. A boy is born into the kind of southern heat that makes everything shimmer like a mirage. Larkin Allen Collins, Jr., the South in the 1950s. Segregation, humidity, and the sound of blues drifting out of juke joints into the night air. Allen's father is there, then not there, then gone completely. Another southern ghost who left nothing but his name. His mother, Eva, raises him alone, working whatever jobs she can find to keep the lights on. Allen is quiet as a child. Too quiet. The kind of kid who sits in the back of the classroom and stares out the window, watching thunderstorms roll in off the Atlantic, counting seconds between lightning and thunder. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3. The rhythm of the storm speaks to him in a language he doesn't have words for yet. He's not shy exactly, he's somewhere else, living in a frequency only he can hear. Other kids play football, chase girls, get in fights. Allen just listens to everything. The rhythm of rain on tin roofs, the rumble of cars passing, the way the world has a pulse if you're quiet enough to hear it. That's the first blues. Rain falling, thunder calling. Before he ever touched a guitar, he was counting beats in storms. Then someone hands him a guitar. He's 12 years old. The instrument is cheap, probably stolen, definitely out of tune. Allen doesn't care. He picks it up and something clicks into place like a key finding its lock. This is it. This is the language he's been searching for. Not words. Words never worked for him anyway. But this. 6 strings and the ability to say everything he's ever felt without opening his mouth. He teaches himself. No lessons, no formal training, just hours alone in his room playing until his fingers bleed, then playing some more. He's not trying to be good. He's trying to speak. Something about the loneliness of growing up without a father. Something about the weight of being poor in the richest country in the world. Something about the rage and beauty of being alive in a place that wants to crush you. The guitar understands. The guitar speaks back. By 16, Allen is the best guitar player in Jacksonville that nobody's heard of. By 18, he's hungry, not for food, though there's that too, but for something bigger. A way out, a way up, a reason to be. The local music scene is small, incestuous, everyone knows everyone. There's this singer named Ronnie Van Zant who's putting together a band. Hard-working guy, disciplined with a voice that sounds like whiskey and broken glass. Word on the street, he needs a guitar player who can match his intensity. Summer, 1969. Allen is 17 years old. He stands under the awning of Ronnie Van Zant's house during a thunderstorm. Rain hammering down, lightning splitting the sky open like God is taking pictures. He's holding his guitar in a garbage bag to keep it dry, amp cord wrapped around his shoulder. He knocks. Ronnie opens the door, stocky, intense, eyes that see right through bullshit. Looks at this skinny kid with long hair and an old guitar and says, "If you can play louder than the thunder, you're in." Alan doesn't say anything. He never was good with words. He just unwraps the guitar, plugs into an amp Ronnie's got in the living room, turns it up until the tubes start to glow red and plays. Not a song, just feeling. Raw, unfiltered emotion translated into electricity and sound. Outside, thunder crashes like God is answering. Inside, Alan's guitar is louder, meaner, more alive. Lightning flashes through the window, illuminates Alan's face for 1 second. Concentrated, lost, somewhere else. When he finishes, the rain stops, just stops. Ronnie is staring at him, not smiling, just staring. Then, "You're in. Rehearsals tomorrow." And then silence. That's how Leonard Skynyrd gets Alan Collins. And that's how Alan Collins gets a family. Because that's what Skynyrd becomes, not just a band, but brothers. Ronnie on vocals, leading with iron will and southern charm. Gary Rossington on guitar, Alan's partner in crime. The other half of the greatest twin guitar attack rock will ever see. Bob Burns on drums. Larry Junstrom on bass, later replaced by Leon Wilkson. They're all poor, all hungry, all desperate to prove that Southern boys can play rock and roll as hard and mean as anyone from New York or London. They rehearse in a place called the Hell House, a tiny shack with no air conditioning and mosquitoes the size of birds. Ronnie runs it like boot camp, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, playing the same riffs until they're perfect, then playing them again until they're better than perfect. No drugs during rehearsal, no drinking, no fooling around. This is work. This is war. Ronnie and Alan are opposite sides of the same coin. Ronnie is discipline, structure, the general giving orders. Alan is chaos, emotion, wildfire, barely contained. Together, they're alchemy. They write songs about the South they know. Not the romanticized moonlight and magnolias South, but the real South. Poor and proud and complicated. Working-class heroes and Saturday night fights and the weight of history nobody asked for but everyone carries. Ronnie writes the words. Alan writes the feeling. Together they create something no one's heard before. Southern rock that's equal parts blues and country and pure rage. The album that changes everything. Pronounced LOH nerd, Skynyrd. The world hears a certain song for the first time. 9 minutes. Starts as a ballad. Ronnie singing about a love that can't be caged. About needing to be free even if freedom means loneliness. Alan plays delicate, almost pretty guitar underneath. And then, at the 4-minute mark, everything explodes. The camera circles around Alan and Gary in the studio. Golden light pours through the window. Alan's hand shakes slightly as he begins the solo, not from nerves, from anticipation, like a runner at the starting line. Gary nods, and Alan launches. The solo isn't just notes, it's a scream translated into electricity. 4 minutes of pure emotion, building and building, Alan and Gary trading licks, pushing each other higher, faster, more dangerous. Alan plays like he's trying to outrun something. Death, maybe. Poverty. The future. His fingers fly. Sweat pours. His face twists into something that looks like agony and ecstasy having a conversation about God. The screen fades to black, but the guitar keeps screaming. The solo becomes legendary. Not technically the hardest ever played. There are faster players, more precise players. But nobody plays with more soul. When Alan plays, you're not hearing music. You're hearing a man trying to communicate something bigger than words, bigger than notes. You're hearing someone trying to survive by bleeding their heart through their fingers. The song becomes an anthem. At every Skynyrd show, the crowd chants for it. And every time, Alan delivers. Sometimes better, sometimes different, but always with everything he has. It's not a performance. It's an exorcism. They become famous. Not Beatles famous, not Zeppelin famous, but famous enough. Tours across America, stadiums, money, women, the whole rock and roll dream. But here's the thing about dreams. They require sacrifice. Alan is on the road 300 days a year. He's 23 years old and he's never in one place long enough to call it home. The drinking starts. Not problem drinking yet. Just the social drinking that comes with being in a rock band in the 1970s. Beer after shows, whiskey to take the edge off. Nothing he can't handle, nothing unusual. But there's something else happening inside Alan that nobody sees. The fame doesn't sit right on him. He's uncomfortable in interviews, awkward with fans. On stage with his guitar, he's a god. Off stage, he's still that quiet kid who can't find the words. Ronnie notices. Ronnie sees everything. He pulls Alan aside one night after a show. "You good, brother?" Alan nods, says he's fine. Ronnie looks at him with those eyes that cut through bullshit. "You're the soul of this band. When you hurt, we all hurt." But Alan doesn't talk, never learned how. He just says, "I'm good, promise." It's a lie, but it's the lie they both need to believe. And then silence. Skynyrd is at their peak. They play Knebworth with the Rolling Stones. Alan is 24 years old and living the dream he's been chasing since he picked up a guitar. But something is changing. The drinking is getting heavier. He starts having nightmares. Dreams about planes falling from the sky. Dreams about drowning in air. Dreams where he's playing guitar but no sound comes out, just silence. Terrible silence. He wakes up in hotel rooms and doesn't remember the name of the city. The road is eating him alive, and then Ronnie starts talking about dying. Starts saying he won't make it to 30. There's a new song about death and excess and the way the road destroys you. Ronnie writes it like prophecy. Alan plays the guitar parts like a funeral dirge. Everyone laughs it off. Ronnie's just being dramatic, but Alan believes him. Alan feels it too. Something is coming. Something dark. Thunder in the distance, getting closer. The storm he can't outplay. October 20th, 1977. The band is flying from Greenville, South Carolina to Baton Rouge, Louisiana in a chartered plane. The plane is old, been having mechanical problems. But the schedule is tight. The tour must go on. Alan boards with everyone else. Ronnie, Steve Gaines, the new guitarist, only been with the band a year but already family. Cassie Gaines, Steve's sister, one of the backup singers. Dean Kilpatrick, their road manager. The crew. Everyone tired, everyone ready for the next show. The plane sounds wrong from takeoff. A weird rattle, a cough in the engines. Alan sits toward the back. He's been drinking, not drunk, just maintaining. He closes his eyes, tries to sleep, can't. Opens them, looks around. Ronnie catches his eye across the aisle, gives him that nod. The "We're brothers" nod, the "We're in this together" nod. Alan nods back. Neither of them knows it's goodbye. The engines fail, both of them. The plane starts falling. The cabin lights flicker. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. Someone screams, someone prays. Alan grabs his seat and thinks, this is it. This is the nightmare, the one Ronnie saw coming. Time doesn't slow down. It stops, suspended in that moment between flight and fall. A guitar string snaps somewhere. The sound reverberates, and then, nothing. Alan wakes up in the wreckage. He's bleeding. His arm is broken. Ribs are cracked. But he's conscious, alive. He tries to move and can't. He's pinned under seats and metal. Around him, the swamp is silent, too silent. He hears wind, just wind. He calls out, "Ronnie?" The wind answers, nothing else. "Steve?" Still nothing. Just wind and the sound of his own heartbeat, too loud, too fast, too guilty. And then silence. Eventually people come. Locals who heard the crash. They pull survivors from the wreckage. Alan is one of them. Gary Rossington, Artemis Pyle, a few others. But Ronnie Van Zant, dead. Steve Gaines, dead. Cassie Gaines, dead. Dean Kilpatrick, dead. Everyone Alan loved, everyone who mattered, gone. And Alan gets to live. In the hospital, when they tell him who died, Alan doesn't cry. Can't cry. He just stares at the ceiling. The ghost in Ronnie's eyes appears every time Alan blinks. A nurse asks if he needs anything. He whispers, "A guitar." Like the guitar can fix this, like the guitar can bring them back. Days later, when he can move his arms again, someone brings him one. He plays 3 notes. Stops. The guitar doesn't speak anymore. It accuses. The funerals are unbearable. Ronnie buried in a Jacksonville cemetery. Steve and Cassie together. Alan attends on crutches, arm in a cast, soul in pieces. People keep saying, "At least you survived. Thank God you survived." Alan nods. But inside he's screaming, "Why? Why me? Why not Ronnie?" Ronnie was the leader, the heart. Steve was just getting started. What does Alan have? Just guilt and a guitar that won't forgive him. He writes it down one night in the hospital on a scrap of paper. "They died. I lived. God help me." He folds the paper and puts it in his wallet, carries it for years. A prayer, an accusation, a life sentence. Skynyrd is over. You can't survive losing your singer, your newest star, your road manager, your family. The band officially disbands. Alan goes back to Jacksonville, tries to figure out how to be alive when everyone else is dead. The drinking gets worse. Not social drinking anymore, survival drinking. Drinking to forget, drinking to sleep without nightmares. Drinking because sober means remembering, and remembering means drowning in air. He tries to play music again. 1979, forms the Rossington Collins Band with Gary, the 2 survivors trying to make sense of survival. They record in studios that feel like tombs. Alan sits with his guitar trying to find the old magic, but every note sounds hollow. Every solo feels like theft. He's playing Ronnie's dreams, Steve's potential, music that should have been made by ghosts. They make albums, tour, but it's not the same, can never be the same. Alan is playing guitar, but his heart is in a swamp in Mississippi. Every solo, every show, every note, it's all haunted. The band records, releases music, but Alan can't hear it properly anymore. When fans scream for the old songs, Alan hears the plane crash. The sound of metal tearing. Ronnie's last nod. And then silence. The drinking accelerates. The guilt compounds. By 1982, the Rossington Collins Band has fallen apart. Alan's marriage has collapsed. He's drinking a 5th of whiskey a day, maybe more. The guitar sits in the corner more often than in his hands. His mother worries, Gary worries, everyone worries. But what do you say to someone who's been dead for 5 years but whose body forgot to stop? Alan is 33 years old. He's been living in the wreckage for 9 years. He's got a girlfriend, Deborah Jean Watts. They're driving back from a party one night. Alan is drunk, too drunk. But he's always too drunk now. It's his default setting. The car is going fast. Alan likes speed, always has. Motorcycles, cars, anything that moves fast enough to outrun the past. The car hits something, a tree, a pole, something solid and unforgiving. Metal tears, glass explodes. Again, the universe's encore, God's second lesson. Alan wakes up in a hospital. Again. His girlfriend is dead. Again. Alan is alive. Again. But this time, survival comes with a price steeper than guilt. He's paralyzed from the waist down. His spine is shattered. He'll never walk again, never stand on stage, never feel the vibration of a Marshall stacked through his legs. The bird that flew free is grounded, forever. And then silence. They charge him with vehicular manslaughter. DUI. The trial is brutal. The prosecutor paints him as a reckless drunk who killed an innocent woman. The defense says he's already suffering enough, paralyzed, broken, destroyed. The judge sentences him to probation, no jail time. But Alan knows the real sentence is life. Life in a wheelchair. Life knowing he killed someone. Life knowing he survived again when someone else died. Twice now. Twice God let him live while taking everyone around him. He goes home to Jacksonville, gets a wheelchair-accessible house, tries to play guitar from the chair, can still use his hands, still has the muscle memory, but the music tastes like ashes. What's the point? Who is he playing for? The ghosts won't listen. The living don't understand. He's a guitar player who can't stand, a survivor who should have died, a soul that's been trying to land for 9 years but gravity won't let him. Skynyrd does a tribute reunion tour. Johnny Van Zant, Ronnie's younger brother, takes over vocals. And they want Alan. Musical director, they say. Help us get it right. Honor the legacy. Alan agrees. What else is he going to do? They build ramps on the stage. Alan rolls out in his wheelchair, guitar across his lap, and the crowd loses their minds. He's a ghost made flesh, proof that something survived. The lights come up, yellow and dim. Alan sits center stage in the wheelchair, spotlight creating a halo he doesn't deserve. The band stands around him, Gary to his left, everyone else in a circle. They play the old songs. When they get to that song, the anthem, the one everyone knows, Alan plays the solo. His fingers still remember, still fly, still bleed emotion through the fretboard. But when the song ends and everyone's cheering, Alan looks at the empty space where Ronnie should be standing, where Steve should be. And he knows, this isn't honor, this is torture. The bird flies again, but the soul never lands. He does the tour, plays dozens of shows from that wheelchair. Every night the crowd screams. Every night Alan plays. And every night he goes back to his hotel room and drinks until he can't feel the guilt anymore. The wheelchair, the dead, the living, all of it. They ask him to do another tour. He says no. Can't do it again, can't keep playing ghosts. The final years are ugly. Alan's health collapses, his body, weakened by paralysis and alcohol, starts shutting down. Pneumonia, then chronic infections. He's in and out of hospitals. Friends visit less. They can't watch him die slowly, it's too painful. Gary Rossington stays loyal. They're the only two left from the core, the only two who survived the crash. Gary tries to help, but what can you do? Alan has been dying since 1977. Now his body is finally catching up. January 23rd, 1990. Alan Collins dies of pneumonia at his home in Jacksonville. He's 37 years old. 13 years after the plane crash. 13 years of playing guitar in a world where the music lost its meaning. 13 years of surviving when he wanted to be with Ronnie and Steve. His last words, according to people who were there, are, "I'm coming home." Whether he means Jacksonville or something else, someplace where his brothers are waiting, where he can finally land, nobody knows. And then silence. And then the funeral is in Jacksonville. They bury him with his guitar. A Les Paul, the same kind he played on those recordings that changed Southern rock forever. Gary Rossington speaks, can barely get through it, says, "Alan was the soul of Skynyrd. Without him, we were just a band. With him, we were brothers." He never recovered from that crash. He died in 1977, just like Ronnie and Steve. It just took his body 13 years to figure it out. He's crying. Everyone's crying. But there's also relief, because everyone knows Alan has been dead since 1977. This is just making it official. Now he can finally land. The tributes come slowly. Musicians remember. Slash talks about learning that solo note for note. Warren Haynes says Alan taught him what it meant to play with soul instead of technique. Zakk Wylde calls him one of the greatest Southern rock guitarists who ever lived. In 2006, Lynyrd Skynyrd is inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Alan is inducted posthumously. His Les Paul goes into a display case, behind glass, under dim lights, silent and perfect. Sometimes fans stand in front of it and cry. They remember the music. They don't think about Alan in a wheelchair. Alan drunk, Alan haunted. They remember the myth, not the man. And maybe that's mercy. Lynyrd Skynyrd continued without him. Still tours today with Johnny Van Zant singing and Gary Rossington as the last original member until Gary's death in 2023. Every show ends with that song, and every time they play it, there's a moment, right before the solo kicks in, where the crowd gets quiet, waiting. And the guitarists who play Alan's parts do their best, but everyone knows it's not the same, can never be the same. Because Alan wasn't just playing notes. He was exorcising demons, screaming at God, trying to outrun a plane crash that happened in 1977 but never really ended. There's footage from that 1987 reunion tour. Alan in the wheelchair, guitar across his lap, playing the solo he's played 1,000 times. And if you watch closely, really watch, you can see it in his face. This isn't triumph. This isn't glory. This is a man saying goodbye to the music, to his brothers, to himself. His fingers fly across the fretboard like they're trying to escape, like they're trying to finally, after 10 years, take flight. The solo ends, the crowd roars, and Alan just sits there, head down, waiting for permission to leave. The bird flies free, but the soul never lands. Gary Rossington said it best. Alan never landed after that crash. He just kept falling slower and slower for 13 years. It's brutal, it's honest, and it's true. The plane crash killed Alan Collins. The 13 years after were just gravity taking its time. But here's the thing, the music remains. That solo, that scream translated into electricity and emotion. Every time someone picks up a guitar and tries to play it, they're channeling Alan. Every time a band stretches out a solo and lets it breathe, lets it build, lets it say what words can't, that's Alan's legacy. He taught a generation of guitarists that technique is nothing without soul. That the best solos aren't the fastest or the most complex. The best solos are the ones that bleed. His Les Paul sits in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, behind glass. The reverb of that famous solo still echoes through the halls, fading slowly but never quite disappearing. There's a plaque. It says his name, lists his accomplishments. But it doesn't say the truth, that Alan Collins played louder than thunder and learned that silence always has the last word, that he survived the unsurvivable and discovered that sometimes dying young is mercy, that he was the soul of Skynyrd, and when Ronnie died, Alan's soul went with him. The body just took 13 years to follow. Alan Collins, 1952-1990. Guitarist, brother, ghost. The man who played louder than thunder and learned that some souls don't get to land. He didn't play the guitar. He let it speak. And what it said was this: freedom is the anthem, but gravity is the curse. Some birds fly free, some souls never land. They just keep soaring, bleeding, screaming into the void, waiting for gravity to finally show mercy. Surviving isn't living, it's just dying slower. But in that slow death, Alan Collins left us the most beautiful scream rock and roll ever heard. And in the echo, in that long, fading reverb, you can still hear a man trying to fly, still reaching, still falling, still free. And yet, for all the darkness that wrapped itself around his life, there were moments of light that refused to be extinguished. Friends talk about the way Alan laughed when he was off the clock, the way his eyes lit up when a kid showed him a beat-up guitar and asked him how to play a D chord. There are stories from the early days in Jacksonville when the band was broke and sleeping on floors that always end the same way. Alan, staying up later than everyone else, quietly fixing broken cables, restringing guitars, making sure the gear would work for the next show. He was chaos on stage, but off stage he was the guy soldering wires at 3 in the morning so the dream wouldn't crack at the seams. If Ronnie was the general, Alan was the mechanic of the soul, keeping the machine running even when his own engine was burning oil. Eva, his mother, kept every clipping, every ticket stub, every photo. In her living room, long after the crash, the walls were a museum of a son who rarely smiled in pictures but somehow glowed when a guitar was in his hands. Neighbors remember how Alan, even at the height of Skynyrd's fame, would roll up in a beat-up car, limp from years on the road, and still take the time to sit with his mother on the porch and just listen to the cicadas. Fame took him to stadiums in foreign countries, but the center of his universe was still a small house in Jacksonville where the air smelled like soap, coffee, and memory. In that house, for a few hours at a time, he wasn't a haunted rock star. He was just a son. There were other small salvations. Charity shows after the crash, where Alan insisted the proceeds go to the families of crew members whose names never made the papers. Quiet visits to hospitals where he'd wheel himself into rooms of kids who had lost the use of their legs and tell them softly that life didn't end just because you couldn't stand. He never framed himself as an inspiration. He was too eaten alive by guilt for that. But in those moments, without cameras, without stages, something like grace flickered through the wreckage. Musicians who knew him talk about his generosity with music. Alan never hoarded riffs. If a younger player came up with a lick that made him grin, he'd push them forward, tell them to play it louder, meaner, more honest. He believed songs were bigger than the people who wrote them, that the music belonged to whoever needed it most. That's the paradox at the center of his life. A man who felt crushed by the very songs that made him famous, still fighting to keep the pipeline of that same music flowing for others. Listen closely to live tapes from the mid-70s, and you can sometimes hear him talking under his breath between verses, like he's arguing with someone only he can see. On bootlegs, buried beneath the roar of the crowd, there are fragments. "Come on, Ronnie. We got this. One more time." Maybe it was just adrenaline, the way some players talk themselves through hard passages. Or maybe it was something else. A man already afraid of losing the people who anchored him, rehearsing encouragement for ghosts that hadn't died yet. The tragedy of Alan Collins is not just that he survived a plane crash and a car wreck. It's that his imagination seemed built to anticipate loss long before it arrived. There is one story that surfaces again and again among people who were close to him. Near the end, when his lungs were failing and his body was tired of being a battlefield, someone brought a guitar into his room. He hadn't played in weeks. The calluses on his fingertips had softened, the skin gone tender. The friend set the guitar on his lap and asked if he wanted them to put it away. Alan shook his head, wrapped his right hand around the neck, left hand hovering over the strings like a man greeting an old friend he wasn't sure would forgive him. He played 3 notes. Just 3. Soft, imperfect, a little out of tune. The room went quiet. For a second, everybody there felt it. The old lightning, the old storm gathering in a man's hands. Then he smiled, small and tired, and said, "Still there, light in the middle of wreckage." Maybe that's the truest image of him. Not the wild-eyed young gun ripping across a festival stage. Not the broken man in a wheelchair under reunion tour spotlights, but the fragile figure in a dim room playing 3 notes to prove to himself that the fire hadn't completely gone out. A man whose life was defined by accidents, being on the wrong plane, in the wrong car, in the wrong era, and yet who kept finding again and again a way to translate all that wrongness into sound that felt right. So when we talk about Alan Collins, we shouldn't only frame him as a cautionary tale, a headline about addiction and tragedy and wasted potential. We should talk about the stubborn hope buried in the way he kept showing up with a guitar, even when everything in his life argued against it. About the way his solos carried not just swagger but vulnerability, not just fury but a kind of bruised tenderness. About the fact that a boy who grew up counting thunder in Jacksonville turned that storm into music that still rattles the windows of people who weren't even born when he died. The bird never landed. That much is true. But there were moments, on stage, on porches, in hospital rooms, in quiet late-night conversations with friends, when it did something just as miraculous. It hovered. It held itself in the air against impossible gravity, wings shaking, heart pounding, refusing to fold. In those suspended seconds, Allen Collins wasn't a victim of fate or a symbol of rock and roll excess. He was simply a human being, lit from within by a gift he neither asked for nor fully understood, trying as best he could to turn pain into something beautiful before the sky finally closed over him. The screen fades to black. Wind sounds, distant thunder, and somewhere, very faint, the opening notes of a guitar solo that changed everything. The bird flies, the soul never lands, the music plays on, forever, haunted, beautiful, free.